Now, when it comes to buying a house, whether you're looking to purchase a home to live in or if you're an investor, one common belief is that it requires a lot of money. Even though you're not outright buying the house in full, it's a safe assumption that you're going to be required to come out of the pocket with something, which is usually several thousands of dollars. This is known as your down payment, which is a percentage of the purchase price of the home. And then you also have your closing costs, which are additional fees beyond the property's purchase price. And depending on the home's price, this could be thousands of more dollars. So becoming a homeowner can be quite expensive. But in this video, I want to talk about how you can possibly purchase a home while you're dead broke, coming out of pocket with nothing or very little. And this video is more so geared towards those looking to purchase a primary residence to live in. As far as investors, I'm gonna make a separate video for y'all on how to purchase an investment property with $0 out of pocket. So look out for that one. But for now, first and foremost, as it pertains to home buyers, if you really want to buy a house and don't have any money saved up, it's not the end of the world. And it still starts with you getting pre-approved with the lender. And when it comes to pre-approvals, lenders usually look at three things: your income, your credit score, and how much money you have saved up for your down payment and closing costs. And based on those three factors, they'll decide if you're pre-approved or not, and also which loan program makes the most sense for you to go with, which can be either conventional, FHA, VA, or in some cases USDA, with the last three being backed by the government. As far as your income, lenders want it to be consistent, usually requiring you to be on your job for at least a year, and that's if it's a W-2 job. If you're self-employed, lenders usually want the last 2 years of your tax returns. They'll average those amounts and use the average as your yearly income. So once they have the yearly, they can get the monthly, and they'll compare your monthly income with your monthly debt, and that's how they'll determine the maximum purchase price you're approved for. Now, as far as your credit score, it's no secret that the higher the credit score, the better. But ideally, you'll want your score to be at least a 620. Now, depending on the loan type, it's possible to get approved for a score as low as a 500, but terms of the loan won't be as favorable. And if you don't have money for a down payment and closing costs, then you definitely want a much higher credit score than a 500. Now, as far as your down payment and closing costs, VA and USDA loans don't require a down payment, which is great news if you're low on money, because then you would only have to worry about the closing costs. And conventional and FHA loans require as low as 3 and 3.5% down. So exactly how do you get around paying these fees? So you have a few options. As far as closing costs, some lenders are willing to finance most of the closing costs within the loan. This process is known as rolling. So the closing costs would be rolled into the loan amount and would be factored into your monthly mortgage payment. If you're able to do this with a VA or USDA loan where there's no down payment requirement, then most of your fees just disappeared. Another option is local and state programs that offer grants to help with down payment and closing cost assistance. Now, these are incredible because they're usually forgivable. Now, they do come with some conditions as far as staying in the property for a certain amount of time or not being able to sell or refinance for a certain amount of time. But if you meet the conditions, then a lot of times 100% of the grant will be forgiven. So that's pretty much like free money. And the cool thing about a lot of these grants, a lot of times you're able to combine 2 or 3 grants together. Like you might get a city or a county grant, but then also get a grant from the state as well. I actually had a client get $50,000 with a combined 5 grants, all for one purchase. So these grants do come in handy. Now, of course, you do have to qualify for them. Usually they come with income limits. Of course, they don't want to give them to people who don't need them. But nevertheless, using programs that offer down payment and closing cost assistance, specifically through forgivable grants, that's a great way to cut these costs. Now, another way to get your down payment and closing costs covered is with seller concessions, which is when the seller pays some or all of them for you. Now, this is actually pretty common for the seller to pay part of the buyer's closing costs, especially in a buyer's market. And the longer a property's been sitting on the market, then the more leverage a buyer will have to get closing help from the seller. Time on the market is a seller's worst nightmare. And when it gets to like 3 weeks or a month of the house just sitting, eventually the asking price will start dropping and buyers will have more leverage to ask for closing help. So if you ever come across a house that's been sitting on the market for a little while, as a buyer, just know that the ball is in your court when it comes to negotiations. Now, we just went over ways to get your down payment and closing costs paid for while going through a lender, which is usually how things work. But there are other methods that you could possibly take, which will allow you to become a homeowner with little to no upfront costs. And it's by using alternate financing methods known as creative financing. And one of those methods is through seller financing, which is when the seller acts as the lender to the buyer and will allow the buyer to make payments directly to them over time. A seller financing deal can be beneficial to both parties, especially to the buyer if they won't qualify for a traditional mortgage. And it's up to both parties to come up with the terms of the agreement. And having no upfront down payment can possibly be something that's agreed on. Now, another alternate financing method is a rent-to-own deal, which is kind of similar to a seller financing deal. But in seller financing deals, the title and deed of the property are transferred immediately to the buyer once the deal is made. But in rent-to-own deals, the renters are paying rent each month, and a portion of the rent goes towards the future down payment or purchase price. And eventually, the renters will have the option to purchase the home, whether they want to go through a traditional lender or use seller financing if the seller will agree. But the title and deed aren't transferred to the renter until they exercise their right to buy the property and determine how they're going to finance the rest of the purchase. Now, all of these methods we just went over are examples of how you can possibly purchase a home without having to come out of pocket with a boatload of money. But if you truly want to be in the best position to purchase a home, it's best to have savings. Just because it's possible to purchase a home with little to no money in the bank, it's definitely not ideal. So I feel slightly obligated to go over how you can put yourself in the best position possible when it comes to purchasing a home. That way, when you're ready, it won't be contingent on you being able to get grants or closing cost help from the seller. Buying a home is a lot harder to do when you're broke. And the term broke doesn't mean you're not making money. It just means you're not saving money. After all of your expenses and bills are paid, you don't have anything left to save. Now, when people have jobs, usually the reason for them not being able to save money is too much unnecessary spending. Now, sure, there are circumstances when you can do everything in your power to save money, but you can't because the cost of living is so high. However, when people start to make more money, they start to spend more money. And the crazy thing is, they won't even realize how much money they're consistently wasting on unnecessary things. It's kind of like a pipe that's behind a wall that has a small hole in it. That pipe is constantly leaking water and you don't even realize it. And you're not addressing it because you don't even know that it's happening until eventually it gets so bad that the damage becomes visible. And that's when you're finally able to tackle the problem. Now, the damage finally becoming visible is equivalent to you finally realizing, I've been working at this job for such and such years and I have no money saved up. See, once you realize it, then you can begin to tackle the problem. And tackling the problem starts with creating a budget. Using a budget is so underrated, and it's something that everyone should do. A budget will help you see where your money is going and you'll be able to identify exactly where it's being wasted, giving you the clarity that you need to make adjustments to your spending and plan accordingly. Now, while you're creating a budget, something that's extremely important that you remember to add to your budget is to pay yourself first. Every time you get paid, a set amount should be placed into your savings account. And this is going to take a lot of discipline and dedication, especially as the amount gets larger and larger. But you got to try to stay focused on the task at hand. And the biggest opportunity to save those big lump sums of money is usually around tax time. So if you get a refund, don't look at it as extra money and blow the whole thing. Add that to your savings. And it's good to get in the habit of saving anyway, because once you become a homeowner, you definitely want a savings or an emergency fund for maintenance and repairs. Now, after you have your budget and you're paying yourself first, the last task is to live below your means. Just because you can afford certain things doesn't mean that you have to. And I'm not saying to be all extra frugal, because it's definitely okay to enjoy life, but try not to get in the habit of consistently spending unnecessarily. That would defeat the whole purpose of budgeting and trying to save in the first place. And if you stick with your budget long enough and continue to save money, eventually you'll be in a great position to purchase a home. And get this, you can possibly still take advantage of grants, lender credits, seller concessions. All of those options are still on the table, but at least you wouldn't be depending on it so much. So that's my advice when it comes to trying to purchase a home. But like I said, even if you are low on funds, it's not a complete deal breaker. You just have to utilize other options. But anyway, I hope this video was helpful, and thanks for watching.